I am the master. So anyways, these videos that they got private, or they were put in private, but while they were put in private, I still had this open, so I'm going to record this. And sorry for any of my Uncharted 3 channel fans, even though I only have like 18 subscribers. I haven't been putting up videos, and I'm sorry about that. It's just it's kind of hard having two channels. I don't know how people do it. I have a hard time with one channel, but this is gonna be bad quality, but I hope you enjoy, and hopefully I can get this one too. But the other one, I refreshed it, and that's the main one. That's the one that had everything, and I'm really disappointed in that. But let's get to it.
I am co-lead designer on Uncharted 3 Drake's...
Sorry, hang on. We're gonna let this puppy load while we watch this one. So I'm gonna stop commentating and enjoy the video.
Deception.
Can you talk a little about heading into this project, what 3D opened up to you guys creatively?
Well, putting 3D into Uncharted 3 was a very interesting process for us, because the opportunities it opened were twofold. For our traversal gameplay, our climbing, you can now get a much deeper sense of vertigo when Drake is like climbing along a ledge on a deep crevasse. You look down into the abyss and it just feels so much deeper and more epic. And also from the standpoint of our combat gameplay, when you're like hiding behind a piece of cover, you can now peek out of it and really see around the corners more easily and get sight lines on enemies and really feel the depth of the scene and aim at them more accurately. So it enhances all the pillars of our gameplay.
Can you talk a little about the fact that this is a third-person perspective game versus a first-person, and how that really, in a way, makes the 3D pop?
Sure. Making a third-person game with 3D is, to some degree, easier than making a first-person game in 3D, because you generally know where the player is focusing. Usually they'll be focusing on the character that they're playing as. So that means that you can place your convergence plane on the player. The convergence plane is the point that the eyes are focusing on, that is the point from which you derive the depth of the scene. So in a first-person game, you constantly have to be guessing what the depth of your scene is, where the player's eyes are trying to focus, and you can base it on where their reticle is at the time. But let's say that you swipe across a building deep in the background, and then your camera comes across a lamppost that's right in front of you. Suddenly, you have a question: is the player focusing on that lamppost, or are they focusing on the building in the distance? And that happens much, much more frequently in a first-person shooter than it does in a third-person action-adventure game. So right there, we have it easier right off the bat. But then we have another challenge, which is that our game has thousands and thousands of designer-placed cameras, where we want to enhance the vertigo of a scene or focus the player on some particular element. So when you're climbing across that crevasse, we've got a camera above you focusing down to show you the deep chasm below you. And in those cases, we now have to have a whole pipeline where the designers, camera by camera throughout the entire game, define where that convergence plane is. So really, it's not a matter of just rendering the scene twice for us. It's a matter of making it a part of our creative pipeline. So that's been a very interesting challenge for us.
Plus, for this game, you've got 3D across not only single player, but multiplayer and potentially co-op. Can you just talk a little about how this entire experience outside of split screen is 3D?
Well, yeah, so both our multiplayer and our co-op experiences support 3D, and that really adds a lot of interesting depth to the multiplayer experience as well. Again, when you add 3D to combat, it really allows you to sort of almost peek around corners without moving the camera, because now you have that little extra depth to the right side or to the left side around cover. So I think that players playing in 3D may actually have an advantage over players in 2D.
What, if anything, have you guys learned or drawn from what we've seen from Hollywood 3D movies and filmmakers that you can apply to a very cinematic game like Uncharted 3?
Well, when we started developing Uncharted 3 in 3D, we started talking to people who had made movies in 3D. And of course, Hollywood 3D is by many years much more developed than video game 3D. We're only just dipping our toes into it, and they've been trying it for decades. So we discovered that there are all sorts of interesting rules that you have to adhere to. Otherwise, you make people's eyes hurt, you make them confused, you make them feel like they don't know what to focus on. And one of those things is that whenever you cut the camera, you have to have the same depth in the first shot as in the second shot that you've cut to. So if you have a close-up followed by a wide shot, both have to have the same depth. And then if you want the wide shot to have more depth than the close-up did, what you have to do is over the next 3 seconds interpolate to the depth that you want that shot to have. And sometimes if the scene is really complex, you want to pull all the depth out of it. So overall, people will still feel that they're seeing a 3D experience, but you need to make it feel good to them as they're watching it. And I think what many people who are playing with 3D don't realize yet is that there's a real art to deciding how much 3D you're going to have in each shot that the player sees. Otherwise, they're going to get really confused and feel sick, and their eyes are going to hurt.
Uncharted 2 had a lot of performance capture. Does the 3D aspect impact performance capture for this game?
I think that our performance capture pipeline is very much the same as it was for Uncharted 2. The 3D doesn't really affect us because fundamentally we're always capturing in 3D anyway. You know, we have 128 cameras all around the actors, so adding 2 in game doesn't really make a difference.
And so, in a lot of ways, the things that you can draw upon for a game like this would be more, I guess, an avatar, because a lot of that was performance capture, but also How to Train a Dragon and those types of CGI 3D experiences.
Yes, absolutely. When we look at Hollywood, we are looking at the new 3D movies and especially how they've drawn people to 3D. You know, for a lot of people, they saw Avatar and that sold them on the concept of 3D. And so we really want that to be Uncharted 3. We want Uncharted 3 to be the video game where you play it in 3D at, you know, Costco or a Sony style store or something, and you say to yourself, man, I really want a 3D TV now.
And speaking of 3D TVs, I wanted to have you address the fact that there is consumer confusion out there with multiple types of passive and active technologies. This game will run on anything, but just explain how that works.
Sure, yeah. There are many different technologies for displaying 3D to the end user. There's active shutter technology, which is what the Bravias use. Those have the larger glasses that have the electronics in them for communicating with the TV and turning each of the 2 eyes on and off repeatedly. Then there's passive, which have the same type of glasses you generally see in a movie theater. The displays tend to be more expensive, but the glasses are less expensive. There's a different look to the technology. And then, of course, there's the auto stereo, which isn't on the consumer market. But no matter what you choose to have, Uncharted 3 will support all of these technologies.
Nice. See, we have time for this. We definitely have time for this. Man, I really wish you guys could have seen all that video. At least you can check out, I'll post the link to my other video where you'll be able to see some of this. I don't know if you guys can hear me from back here, though, but here we go.
Justin Richmond, game director on Uncharted 3.
What was your main goal heading into this after all the success of the last game?
To top ourselves. I think one of the big goals was to sort of make sure that we did what we wanted to do, like, you know, come out of the gate swinging and say, yeah, we made multiplayer last time and it was pretty awesome, but we're going to make it even more awesome this time. And so really capturing that cinematic action-adventure multiplayer feel inside cinematic action-adventure feel of the single player inside the multiplayer. So that became the most important thing, sort of making these epic events work, make it feel like you were sort of playing the Uncharted experience in multiplayer even more than you were last game.
What do you feel that 3D adds to this experience?
I think it's huge. I mean, I think the 3D basically, you know, it's just another level of coolness. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really give you it doesn't give you an advantage, doesn't give you a disadvantage, but it looks really, really awesome. And playing it in multiplayer is really, really fun. You know, you run around and it's like, wow, everything's just popping so much. It just feels so deep. It's really, really cool.
What's the secret to good 3D? Because this game really looks better than anything I've seen before.
It's like everything else. It's hard work. First of all, there's a bunch of ways to do 3D. The most expensive way, in terms of technically to do it, is to render 2 frames, and that's what we're doing. And so, to make it really look deep and look like a 3D experience, you have to render the frame twice, and that's hugely technically complex. And I'm not even going to pretend to understand it. But we knew that was important, and we knew that it was important that like everything else we do, it had to be top notch. And so that was an important factor into the way we made our 3D. Yeah, I mean, it's a little more complex than that. The programmer probably punched me for saying that, but yes, essentially, rendering-wise, once you get 3D, you can do split screen a lot more easily. Then there's all the control problems of 2 players and stuff. But yeah, absolutely.
And it seems like that whole old school thing's coming back, because yesterday with Twisted Metal, they've got split screen. What are your thoughts about that?
I think it's great. I mean, the only reason we didn't do split screen last time was we didn't have time, and it was very complex. The split screen is a great way to play games. I mean, like, how many times have I sat down with my buddy on the couch and been like, I want to play this game. Oh man, we have to have another kit. We have to have another kit or another TV, and we're not going to be able to play this. I want to be able to play with my friends, in the room, and that's a hugely important thing for us.
And when it comes to multiplayer, what really stands out? What pops for you when it comes to looking at the levels that we're talking about?
I mean, I think we have, our artists are amazing, and I think they do an amazing job of making what, should be very, very difficult to look as good as single player look like single player, and that's awesome. But, in terms of, like, pop, I think it's just fun. It's just a fun game, and we constantly get in the office, people coming up and being like, that was really fun. As broken and pre-alpha and all those things as it is, it's still fun, and I think that was hugely important for us.
What's the key for you guys to keep people coming back when it comes to multiplayer, having worked on 2 for so long?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is to make sure that it doesn't get stale, so constantly giving something to do, updating DLC, updating the kind of missions that you're going to be able to do, updating the kind of treasure sets you can find, being able to go in and say, like, add new modes, new game types, all that stuff. I think that's hugely important for us.
How do other games and what's going on out there in the world of gaming influence what you guys are doing when it comes to things?
I mean, we play everything, right? And I think that it's always going to rub off a little bit, but we try to do our own thing. I mean, we try to make sure that what we're doing is something we actually believe in. It's the game we want to make and the game we want to play. When we see somebody do something cool, we're like, man, we got to do better than that. That's more of a challenge than anything else.
Okay, thanks for watching, and hopefully these videos don't get me in trouble, but thanks.